top WNBA pick, Caitlyn Clark. Her first pro game, 10 days away, but even before she makes her pro debut, she has a major Nike deal on the line.
Well, it's funny what kind of people are attracted to. You know, I'm just trying to keep the main thing. The main thing is that's basketball, trying to win games, sticking up for my teammate.
Making it known, like if the refs aren't going to handle it, I will handle it.
Yeah, you know, I think that's just who I am. It's my personality.
Caitlyn Clark just made one of the most shocking moves in WNBA history, and it wasn't even on the court. While the basketball world celebrated her $25 million Nike deal, Caitlyn flipped the script in a way no one saw coming. She didn't just use her new status to bask in the spotlight. Instead, she did something so unexpected that it sent shockwaves throughout the WNBA and beyond. It wasn't about the money, it wasn't about the shoes, it was about loyalty, sisterhood, and a level of selflessness that no one in the world of sports had seen before. While Caitlyn's signature shoes flew off the shelves and her endorsement deal made headlines, there was something even more powerful brewing beneath the surface. Caitlyn, already a superstar and the face of the WNBA's future, chose to share her moment with someone else, her protector, Sophie Cunningham. What happened next wasn't just a publicity stunt or a marketing strategy. It was a quiet act of leadership that showed the true meaning of loyalty and the way women in sports can use their influence to uplift others. This wasn't just a business decision, it was a culture shift. Caitlyn's unexpected gesture redefined what it means to be a leader in sports. It wasn't about taking the spotlight, it was about using that spotlight to shine a light on someone else. So, what exactly did Caitlyn do that left everyone stunned? And why did it change the conversation about power and loyalty in women's sports forever? You're about to find out. Before Caitlyn Clark even played her first professional game, she had already taken the sports world by storm. The hype surrounding her was massive. She wasn't just any rookie, she was a once-in-a-generation talent who had already dominated college basketball and was now stepping into the WNBA with a fire that couldn't be ignored. But her rise to stardom wasn't just about her skills on the court. It was about everything that surrounded her, everything she represented. Caitlyn Clark's signing with Nike wasn't just a regular endorsement deal. It was the biggest in WNBA history. The $25 million contract she secured was bigger than the contracts of some NBA veterans. Yes, you heard that right. A rookie who hadn't even played a single game in the WNBA was landing a deal that most seasoned pros could only dream of. But Caitlyn wasn't just signing a shoe deal, she was becoming a symbol. Nike didn't just want her jump shots or her threes that stretched halfway to the parking lot. They saw something more, something unique. They saw a movement. They saw a trailblazer for women's sports. Her deal with Nike represented more than just her talent. It was about the way Caitlyn was poised to change the game for women in basketball. When she signed, the world took notice. Caitlyn wasn't just joining a league, she was setting the stage to transform the entire culture of women's sports. And it didn't hurt that she was already putting up historic numbers, breaking records with ease. The media buzz around her was deafening, and the anticipation for her pro debut was palpable. But little did everyone know, Caitlyn wasn't just coming to play basketball. She was coming to disrupt the status quo. It wasn't just about Caitlyn as an individual either. She was quickly becoming the face of a new era in the WNBA, where athletes could command attention, spark change, and lead with power both on and off the court. While the world was focused on her rookie debut and her historic deal with Nike, Caitlyn had bigger plans, and they would set the stage for a moment that would change the entire league. But first, Caitlyn needed to make a decision that no one saw coming. And what she did next would redefine what it means to be a leader in women's sports. Caitlyn Clark had already made history, but what she did next was something no one could have predicted. After securing the $25 million Nike deal, most would have expected Caitlyn to bask in the glory of her success. With all eyes on her, she could have easily kept the spotlight firmly on herself, and who could blame her? She had earned it. But Caitlyn wasn't interested in the typical path to fame. Instead, she did something that would shock the entire WNBA and set her apart from the typical star athlete. Rather than celebrating her massive deal in the usual fashion, Caitlyn took an unexpected turn. She invited her teammate, Sophie Cunningham, to what seemed like a low-key Nike event in Indianapolis. Sophie, thinking it was just another branding celebration, had no idea that her life was about to change. What she walked into was nothing short of a sports industry game-changer. The lights dimmed, the music softened, a film began to roll on the big screen. It wasn't a typical brand promo, it was Caitlyn's story. The video highlighted her journey from her college days at Iowa to the fame she was now enjoying in the WNBA. It showed the struggles, rivals, the doubters, the long nights on the court, and the critics. But as the film played, it became clear Caitlyn was no longer the only star in this story. The focus was shifting. She wasn't just telling her own journey. This was a story about everyone who had stood by her, the ones who had fought with her, and the ones who had protected her. And one person in that room had stood by her more than anyone else. As the film finished, Nike handed Caitlyn a custom gold-stitched jersey, something only legends wear. The crowd applauded. It was a moment that screamed, "You've made it." But then Caitlyn did something even more extraordinary. She didn't put the jersey on herself. Instead, she turned to Sophie Cunningham, standing beside her, and said, "This isn't just for me. This is for every woman who shows up, fights hard, and protects her team." At that moment, the room fell silent. It was clear Caitlyn wasn't just celebrating herself. She was honoring the woman who had been with her through it all. Sophie had been more than a teammate. She had been Caitlyn's enforcer, the one who had taken the hits when Caitlyn couldn't, the one who had stepped up when others backed down. And now, in front of Nike's eyes and the world, Caitlyn was making sure that Sophie got the recognition she deserved. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a power move. Caitlyn used her endorsement to elevate Sophie, bringing her into the spotlight in a way that no other athlete, let alone rookie, had ever done before. Instead of celebrating alone, Caitlyn shared her success with the person who had always had her back. This wasn't about individual glory. This was about building something bigger than just basketball. Caitlyn's act of loyalty and selflessness was unheard of in professional sports, especially in a league like the WNBA, where athletes often fight for attention, minutes on the court, and endorsements. But Caitlyn Clark was rewriting the rules, showing that leadership wasn't just about taking the shine, it was about using your platform to lift others up. And she wasn't done yet. To truly understand the magnitude of Caitlyn Clark's gesture, we need to dive into the role that Sophie Cunningham played in this journey. While Caitlyn was making headlines for her remarkable on-court performances and breaking records, Sophie was the silent force behind her. Sophie wasn't just a teammate. She was Caitlyn's protector, her enforcer, her unsung hero. In a league where physical play and tough moments are common, Sophie was the one who took the brunt of the punishment, making sure Caitlyn could do what she does best, dominate the game. Throughout the season, when the spotlight turned on Caitlyn, it was Sophie who stood in the shadows, taking the fouls, blocking the hits, and stepping up when the going got tough. In a sport where every game is a battle, having someone who is willing to fight for you, who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty and make sure you're safe, is invaluable. And that's exactly what Sophie did. She made sure Caitlyn could get to the basket, make the threes, and lead her team without worrying about what was happening on the other side of the court. But Sophie didn't do this for the cameras. She didn't do it for the headlines or the glory. She did it because that's who she was. She was the one who took the fouls you didn't see, who fought in the trenches so Caitlyn could soar. It was the type of loyalty that often goes unnoticed, the kind that doesn't get the fanfare or the applause. Sophie wasn't interested in recognition. She didn't care about accolades or being in the spotlight. Her loyalty was her strength. She showed up day in and day out, ready to do whatever was necessary to help Caitlyn succeed. And Caitlyn knew this. She knew that Sophie had been with her every step of the way, in the moments that mattered most. While others were focused on Caitlyn's jump shots and game-winning plays, Sophie was doing the work that no one else wanted to do. But Caitlyn didn't forget. She saw every sacrifice Sophie made, every time she stepped in to protect her, and when it was her turn to step into the spotlight, Caitlyn made sure that Sophie wasn't left behind. This wasn't just a teammate helping another. This was about something deeper. It was about true partnership and loyalty in a sport where those qualities aren't always valued. In a world full of egos and individualism, Caitlyn and Sophie showed that there is still power in being loyal to the ones who have your back. And that's why Caitlyn's move was so powerful. She wasn't just recognizing Sophie's effort, she was elevating her to the level she deserved. By sharing her moment with Sophie, Caitlyn wasn't just lifting her teammate, she was sending a message to the entire league and to the world about what it means to have real loyalty, to stand by those who stand by you, and to make sure the ones who support you get the credit they deserve. This wasn't just a marketing strategy. It wasn't a public relations move. This was a deep personal gesture, showing that Caitlyn didn't just lead on the court, she led with her heart. And Sophie Cunningham? She was the heart of this story. Caitlyn Clark's move wasn't just about taking the spotlight, it was about using her newfound power to create lasting change, not just for herself, but for someone who had been there for her from the very beginning. After handing Sophie Cunningham a custom gold-stitched jersey and sharing the moment that was supposed to be Caitlyn's alone, she did something that left the entire sports world stunned. It wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was an official endorsement move that would permanently alter Sophie's career. Using the leverage of her own monumental Nike deal, Caitlyn made sure Sophie got something no one else could have predicted: a real endorsement contract. contract built under Caitlyn's own terms. This wasn't a thank you shout-out or a one-time shout on social media. Caitlyn used her power and influence to bring Sophie into her spotlight, securing her a piece of the pie, a substantial piece that many could only dream of in professional sports. When Nike handed Sophie her own custom player edition sneakers, designed in Indiana Fever colors, the significance was clear. These weren't just shoes, they were symbols of empowerment, loyalty, and equality in a space where women's sports have often been undervalued. On the heel of Sophie's sneakers was a simple yet powerful phrase: no backing down. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a reflection of who Sophie was, both as a player and as a person. It was a statement that defined the battles she had fought for her team, for Caitlyn, and for herself. But that wasn't all. Alongside the shoes, Caitlyn presented Sophie with a contract. A real contract. This wasn't a favor, and it wasn't charity. This was Caitlyn making sure that Sophie, who had given so much of herself to the team and to her, would be recognized in the same way. It was a business deal, crafted from Caitlyn's own endorsement, elevating Sophie to a level that no one had ever seen before. In an era where professional athletes are constantly fighting for their own slice of the spotlight, Caitlyn showed that true leadership isn't about hoarding success, it's about sharing it. She could have easily kept the focus on herself, further cementing her status as the next big thing in women's basketball. But instead, she took that opportunity and used it to empower her teammate. She didn't just say, "Thank you." She said, "You deserve this too." And that's what makes Caitlyn's gesture so remarkable. It wasn't a fleeting moment of kindness. It was a lasting, impactful move that set a new standard in the sports world. Nike didn't just see Caitlyn Clark as a basketball player. They saw a cultural force. They didn't just get her game-winning shots or her three-pointers. They were buying into a bigger narrative, a story of loyalty, teamwork, and solidarity. Caitlyn didn't just break records. She broke barriers. And by bringing Sophie into that narrative, she sent a message to the world. This is how we do it. Caitlyn's gesture wasn't just about giving Sophie a pair of sneakers. It was about creating a blueprint for athletes to use their platforms for more than just individual gain. It was about rewriting what power looks like in women's sports, showing that true influence is not just about what you can do for yourself, but what you can do for others. And with that, Caitlyn Clark didn't just change her career, she changed the entire landscape of professional sports. Caitlyn Clark's move was revolutionary, not just for her team or even the WNBA, but for the entire sports world. It broke the mold of what athletes, especially rookies, are expected to do with their newfound fame and influence. In a world where endorsement deals are often used to promote individual success, Caitlyn took the unprecedented step of using hers to elevate someone else, a teammate no less. And this wasn't just about handing out a few gifts or promoting someone on social media. Caitlyn was setting a new standard, one that showed that leadership isn't defined by personal glory, but by how much you lift others along the way. In the highly competitive world of professional sports, athletes fight tooth and nail for opportunities, endorsement deals, and the limelight. The idea of sharing that spotlight with someone else, especially someone as close to you as a teammate, is unheard of. Most rookie athletes would see their first major endorsement deal as their time to shine, their moment to secure their future, and possibly even set up their brand for years to come. Instead, Caitlyn did something almost unthinkable. She brought Sophie Cunningham into her deal, offering her not just recognition, but a true partnership. No other rookie had ever done something like this before, especially in the WNBA. It wasn't just about giving a teammate a shout-out in a press release or posting a nice message on social media. Caitlyn used her $25 million Nike deal, one of the biggest endorsements in women's sports history, to create a genuine business opportunity for Sophie. She wasn't just sharing the fame, she was ensuring Sophie's future, making sure she had a seat at the table, and she did it without hesitation. This wasn't just a personal decision for Caitlyn, it was a cultural statement. In a league where athletes are often pitted against each other, forced to compete for limited attention, Caitlyn showed that success doesn't have to come at the expense of others. She proved that you can be a trailblazer and still bring others along for the ride. Caitlyn's move turned the typical narrative of competition in professional sports on its head. It was no longer just about who could get the biggest deal or who could score the most points. It was about solidarity, about standing together as teammates and rising as one. And the impact didn't just stay within the walls of the WNBA. Caitlyn's decision reverberated beyond basketball, shaking up the broader sports industry. The sports world, which has often been dominated by solo stars and individualistic narratives, was forced to recognize the power of collective success. Caitlyn was teaching the world that true leadership is about lifting uplifting others and empowering those around you. This wasn't some PR stunt. It wasn't a marketing gimmick to garner attention. This was real. Caitlyn didn't just show up on the court. She showed up for Sophie. And that's a level of leadership that's rarely seen, not just in sports, but in any industry. By redefining what power and influence look like in women's sports, Caitlyn Clark made sure that loyalty, generosity, and team spirit would never be seen the same way again. Caitlyn wasn't just changing the game on the court. She was changing the game off the court too. Her actions sent a loud and clear message to the world. If we want to change the future of women's sports, we can't do it alone. It's not enough to just break records. It's about breaking down barriers, lifting each other up, and showing that success isn't just about what you can take, but about what you can give. Caitlyn Clark's decision to share her moment with Sophie Cunningham didn't just make waves for the two of them. It had a ripple effect throughout the entire WNBA. The fallout from Caitlyn's gesture reached far beyond the court and the headlines. Teammates, coaches, and fans alike were left stunned, not just by the sheer generosity of her action, but by the message it sent about what true leadership looks like in sports. In a league where players constantly fight for visibility, sponsorship deals, and endorsements, Caitlyn's decision to elevate Sophie wasn't just a beautiful act of loyalty, it was a clear statement. In the high-stakes world of professional basketball, loyalty often takes a backseat to personal ambition, and athletes are typically trained to secure their own future at any cost. But Caitlyn proved that success doesn't have to come at the expense of others. She demonstrated that being a leader isn't about hoarding power or recognition. It's about sharing it, especially when you have the ability to lift those around you. Her actions forced everyone, from teammates to fans to sports executives, to rethink what it means to lead, especially in women's sports. By choosing to share the spotlight with Sophie, Caitlyn showed that women's sports can't just be about the top athletes or the biggest endorsements. It can't just be about the individual accolades that have long defined male-dominated sports. Instead, Caitlyn's approach brought a new focus to teamwork, loyalty, and solidarity, showing that those are the true pillars of success, not just the big contracts and individual fame. For the Indiana Fever and the WNBA, Caitlyn's move was a wake-up call. Teammates, especially the younger players, began to see firsthand what loyalty truly looks like in action. They witnessed a player who had every reason to think about herself, her career, and her future, yet chose to think about someone who had supported her behind the scenes. In doing so, Caitlyn set an example for everyone in the league, encouraging players to recognize the power of backing each other up, of being true teammates, and of using their platforms for collective success rather than self-promotion. For veteran players, Caitlyn's gestures sparked a moment of reflection. Many were overheard saying how they had never received that level of recognition and respect during their careers. In fact, Alyssa Thomas, a seasoned WNBA player, was overheard commenting on Caitlyn's generosity, noting that Sophie had just been given the kind of attention and opportunity that most players only dream of. Alyssa, a respected veteran, had never seen such a selfless move, and her reaction spoke volumes about how rare this kind of leadership really is in sports. The wider WNBA community also began to realize the significance of Caitlyn's decision. Fans took to social media to praise her, recognizing that what she did wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary. Caitlyn's move wasn't just about boosting one player's career, it was about changing the fabric of women's sports, about proving that the WNBA is more than just a league for women who play basketball. It's a league where relationships matter, where loyalty is rewarded, and where collective success is celebrated just as much as individual glory. As word spread, even the business side of the WNBA took notice. Sponsors, advertisers, and sports marketers began to reconsider their approach to women's sports. Caitlyn didn't just bring attention to herself or her own brand. She brought attention to the WNBA's untapped potential for collaboration, loyalty, and unity. And that's something the league has struggled to build in the past. A sense of collective power that makes the league stronger as a whole. Caitlyn's move, while deeply personal, became a watershed moment for the entire league, a moment that showed the true power of using one's influence for the benefit of the team. Ultimately, Caitlyn's decision to share her moment with Sophie Cunningham didn't just change the course of their careers. It changed the way the WNBA and the world viewed the future of women's sports. Her legacy, now intertwined with Sophie's, will continue to inspire the next generation of athletes who see that success isn't just about contracts and fame. It's about the people you uplift along the way, the bonds you create, and the culture you build for others to thrive in. Caitlyn Clark didn't just change the game. She showed the world that in the end, we rise together. Caitlyn Clark's $25 million Nike deal will undoubtedly go down in history as one of the most lucrative endorsement contracts in the history of women's sports. But as groundbreaking as that deal was, the true significance of Caitlyn's career-defining moment lies in the actions that followed. She didn't just break records with her performance on the court, she rewrote the playbook on how athletes can use their influence to bring about change off the court. Her decision to share the spotlight with Sophie Cunningham wasn't just a selfless gesture, it was a statement that transcended the boundaries of sports. Caitlyn proved that leadership isn't about who can get the most for themselves, it's about who you bring with you along the way. By using her historic deal to bring Sophie into her endorsement deal, Caitlyn created a new blueprint for success in women's sports, one where loyalty, unity, and collaboration are as valued as individual achievement. What Caitlyn did wasn't just rare in the world of basketball, it's revolutionary in any sport. In a world where athletes are often taught to compete against one another for the spotlight, Caitlyn taught us that true power lies in lifting others up. This wasn't about creating a moment for herself to bask in. This was about creating a legacy, one where her teammate, Sophie Cunningham, had an equal opportunity to thrive. Caitlyn showed the world that being a star doesn't mean leaving others in the shadows. It means lighting the way for others to follow. And the ripple effect didn't just stay within the walls of the WNBA. Caitlyn's actions have redefined the role of athletes in sports marketing, sponsorship, and leadership. What Nike bought into wasn't just Caitlyn's scoring ability or her skill on the court. They bought into a story of loyalty, teamwork, and integrity. They bought into a movement, one where athletes, especially women, use their platform not just for personal gain, but to uplift and empower those around them. As the WNBA continues to grow and evolve, Caitlyn Clark's legacy will remain a defining moment in the league's history. She has shown the world that success is not a zero-sum game, that when one player succeeds, it doesn't mean someone else has to fail. By using her platform to reward Sophie Cunningham's loyalty and hard work, Caitlyn has made it clear, the future of women's sports is about more than just the game. It's about the relationships we build, the teams we create, and the way we elevate each other. So yes, Caitlyn Clark may have secured a $25 million deal, but her most valuable contribution to the WNBA and to sports, in general, is the culture shift she's inspired. She's shown us all that leadership isn't just about taking the spotlight, it's about creating space for others to shine, too. This moment wasn't just historic for the WNBA, it was historic for sports, period. In the end, Caitlyn didn't just secure a deal for herself, she secured a future for Sophie Cunningham. And in doing so, she proved that the true measure of success is not what you can take, but what you can give. This is Caitlyn Clark's legacy, and it's a legacy built on loyalty, integrity, and a level of selflessness that's never been seen before in the world of professional sports.